Now, of course, it's not the impeachment that hasn't gone so well for it's not just the impeachment that hasn't gone so well for the Democratic Party, also the primaries in Iowa.
Well, this was meant to be the first primary in the U.S. race, Mike, and well, things didn't go too well, as you might have noticed if you've been watching the news. There was a delay in the results. So 5 days later, here we are 5 days later, and we have tentative results here, Mike. This just came out. 97% of the returns are now in. We'll tell you why there was a delay in a minute, but here we'll go and boil this down a little bit here. 97% of the votes. Bernie Sanders has actually won Iowa with 26.5% of the vote, and then second place Pete Buttigieg, and then followed by Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden in a distant fourth. He was meant to be the front runner, so that's probably the biggest surprise of it all. But there's Bernie on top in Iowa. Now, why is this significant, Mike? Well, just because only a few days ago, Pete Buttigieg had declared himself the winner of Iowa before the results were actually in. And the problems only began there, Mike, as we'll show you in a second. This was the reason why there was a delay, why results of the Iowa caucuses weren't released. Apparently, and this is by Bloomberg News, this is another story. We have a front-running candidate, supposedly in the Democratic Party, who's also running a major news agency in America.
Yes.
The oligarch Michael Bloomberg. But that aside, the Iowa precinct chairs reported issues using a caucus app, which was provided to the Iowa Democratic Party in its delayed results. So this basically screwed up the counting. Here's a look at it right there. This was meant to be an all singing and dancing mobile app that precincts, there's 1,700 precincts around the state, that they would then record the results of the caucuses. These are special types of meetings, not straight voting like you have in other states. Iowa has their own traditional system, okay? And apparently this app completely went haywire, couldn't do arithmetic. So it's not a complicated algorithm type situation. It's basically adding arithmetic. So the app couldn't handle that. So the results were inconsistent. There were problems. It also came out, Mike, that this app was hackable as well. They did not do security testing before the launch of this app.
So they might as well have run a Twitter poll.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Just email the results in or post them on Twitter, and we'll get someone to count them. So this did endear a lot of voters, a lot of confidence to the Democratic Party. If they can't even run a primary, how are they expected to govern the country? This was the fuel that they gave the Republicans. Pete Buttigieg somehow is related to this app, and we'll see why, and we'll have a look at that. So here's Pete, and this was fact-checked. There was a claim made that Buttigieg, the company that provided the app there is Shadow Inc. Pete Buttigieg actually paid $42,500 to Shadow Inc. for software rights. We don't know more of the specifics of this. Biden was also ensnared in this controversy as well, but this was interesting because who benefited, Mike, from the delay in results? All of the previous polling had Sanders out in front by a substantial margin, and then Buttigieg intervened. The Des Moines Register releases a poll on Sunday, Mike. It's a tradition every election. They didn't release their poll before the Iowa caucuses on Sunday. Why? Because of a complaint lodged by Pete Buttigieg's campaign that the poll was unfair. So that went against Sanders' momentum. The delay in results here went against Sanders' momentum, and all of these benefited Buttigieg. And here you see Buttigieg is involved directly financially in some way. We don't know the details yet, but with this app tech firm called Shadow Inc. And we dug a little bit deeper, Mike, and this is what we found. There's an interesting story behind this election tech firm. Now, here are some of the main characters. You have Reid Hoffman. He's a billionaire, founder of LinkedIn, and he's been bankrolling a lot of these election and democracy tech operations and information operations. He's a Silicon Valley oligarch. And there's Dimitri Mehorn, and then you have Tara McGowan. She's a CEO of Acronym. So Pacronym is the political action committee that the tech billionaires are pouring money into. And there's Acronym, that is the sort of the operating company. It's meant to be a not-for-profit, Mike. And it somehow owns Shadow Inc. Okay, and by the way, Tara McGowan, she is Obama for America, ex-Obama for America, and her husband is Michael Hale. He works for the Buttigieg campaign. So there you have a slight problem there with regards to conflicts of interest, okay? But it gets worse. So here we have election meddling and election interference in the U.S. elections. And this is divided into two sides. This is the billionaire tech donor class, the oligarch class, and then you have partisan political operatives. That's the management class. So the money goes into the Political Action Committee, in this case, Pacronym, and that is used to fund Acronym. That's the not-for-profit. And that's used to buy a controlling interest in Shadow Inc., which provided this mobile app that benefited Buttigieg and tried to knock Sanders out. And they deal in big data and election apps. And so Acronym and Pacronym, they're also running, these people are running political news outlets. And there's Tara McGowan, she's running Courier Newsroom, Virginia Dogwood, Arizona Copper Courier, and Reid Hoffman and his partner there running News for Democracy. They're running these mostly on Facebook. So what they do is they gather millions of followers and they run what looks like Republican type news stories. So, or they're targeting people on the fence or centrist Republican voters. And then what they do is right before the election, they did this in 2018, they spring Democratic ads through these big pipelines with big user bases, basically. And so they claim that they're trying to mirror the same tactics used by the Russians and their alleged internet research agency troll farm in St. Petersburg.
Wow.
So this is what the Democratic side, the Obama, Clintonite, DNC elite side, if you will, of the party are doing to manipulate, and they're running various interference and influence campaigns, basically using hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. And so here's Reid Hoffman, and his name's familiar. Yeah, we did cover him a few months ago, Mike, last year. He is one of the financial forces behind New Knowledge. And they ran a campaign to smear Tulsi Gabbard here, claiming that she was being boosted by Russian bots. So the Russian propaganda machine somehow helped to propel Tulsi Gabbard's campaign. That was a fake news story that was planted and engineered by New Knowledge, which was has Reid Hoffman as one of their sugar daddies in the background. And of course, it doesn't end there. As it turns out, New Knowledge ran a false flag information campaign claiming that a Republican senator in the Alabama race, Roy Moore, was being backed by Russian bots. They were creating the Russian bots. And then they leaked it to the media to make the media think that the Russians were backing Roy Moore. And so this, again, election interference, election meddling in the United States by Americans. And so that's really from the beginning, Mike, this is what we've seen time and time again. There's no evidence of any Russian interference, any Russian meddling, but there's plenty of evidence, as we've shown you, of American interference, and specifically from the Democratic Party in meddling with the various electoral processes and running disinformation operations.
And just going back to what Trump was saying during his presentation from the beginning of the program, he, of course, was singling out Christopher Steele and the dodgy dossier. So not just American interference in U.S. elections, but British interference in U.S. elections as well, which is what he was calling out.
And the whole, I'll just finish off by saying, you know, we can talk about this on another program, but the Democrats have a serious problem because Joe Biden's campaign absolutely imploded in Iowa, and he's not looking to do much better in New Hampshire. He might show up second or maybe third in South Carolina, possibly. But looking across all 50 states, he was being pushed forward by the DNC, by the party elites, as the centrist candidate that they were backing. He was Plan A. Plan B is Michael Bloomberg, who will now move into position, who skipped the first, is going to skip the first four primaries. and he's obviously a billionaire. He's got the biggest war chest, and he's a centerist, not a real Democrat, and so he's being moved in as Plan B. Pete Buttigieg was really a manufactured candidate, and you can see a lot of the money and people behind him. It's very shadowy, to no pun intended, the forces that are working to elevate Pete Buttigieg, who looks like Plan C. But all of these people, their job is to peel off enough voters and enough delegates away from Bernie Sanders so that when they go to the Democratic National Convention in July, they'll be able to orchestrate a coup on the convention floor in a second vote. If there's no clear majority, then all the superdelegates will come into play, and then the party luminaries will effectively knock Sanders off of the nomination which he would have won, and replace him with a Bloomberg, possibly Bloomberg Mitt Romney ticket, a unity ticket, bringing Democrats and Republicans together, or a Buttigieg Bloomberg ticket or something like this. So.
Just very briefly, just to end this segment off, Patrick, how is it possible, or how is it within the rules of your election process in the United States that somebody that owns one of the largest media empires on the planet is even allowed to stand as a presidential candidate?
I mean, they thought Donald Trump was a media mogul of sorts. When he ran, he only had a reality TV show that a lot of people didn't take seriously because it's entertainment. Mike Bloomberg has 50 billion in the bank. He managed to get himself on the debate stage in New Hampshire, and Tulsi Gabbard, who has been campaigning for, Bernie Sanders made this point yesterday, been campaigning since the beginning, working hard, and Andrew Yang as well. They weren't allowed because they don't have 50 billion in the bank. This is where American politics has come to. And by the way, Tulsi Gabbard, ironically, put forward a bill called Securing America's Elections to avoid this reliance on digital technology and electronic voting and get back to basics in order to secure elections. So she should be the go-to person right now after the Iowa debacle, but she's getting absolutely zero media coverage. They've made her invisible. She's been given the Ron Paul treatment. And so this is how the media can control the outcomes of who trends and who surges in American politics and elections. It is not an open and fair democratic system in America. It is run by oligarchs and corporations. We just saw the evidence of it now.